Last Epoch, how good is it actually?
Perian here. Today I want to give you guys just a bit of a talk about Last Epoch. Now this is a game that I didn't really play that much before it had its 1.0 official release a week, and
Dude, remember Kriparian 10 years ago? He literally looked exactly the same way, but now he just has wrinkles and stuff. He hasn't aged, he has just gained a couple of wrinkles. That is insane.
some change ago, and a lot of people have been asking me what I think about the game, but I didn't really want to make this video until I felt pretty comfortable that I understand the game on a fairly deep level to properly, give you guys this information.
Okay.
So overall, how good do I think Last Epoch is? I think it is very good.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Slap that Diablo 4 in the face.
It does kind of go in between PoE and Diablo, which is how a lot of reviewers have placed the game. Just a lot of reviewers have placed the game kind of in between the two, presumably in the middle. I would say it's very much not in the middle between those two games.
Yeah.
I think it is a lot closer.
It is above the two games. That's to put it lightly.
To PoE in the way that the game is kind of carefully designed.
Yep.
the min in the game, the details, they are extremely fine-tuned, except for a few examples, of course. And it is like Diablo in the fact that you can just pick up the game and play it at your own will.
Yeah.
So it has a really high level of complexity. Every different class is different. For better or worse.
Dude, that is so good. My favorite part about Last Epoch is the fact that every single class is unique. In Path of Exile, you no longer have classes. Anyone who has played Path of Exile is gonna tell you, oh yeah, classes don't exist in this game. Because every single player that plays Path of Exile just picks a skill gem that you want to play, and then the class is picked by multipliers and what you want to do. If you want to do X, then you pick that class because it has X multipliers. If you want to do something else, yeah, classes are never picked for uniqueness per se. They are just picked because of multipliers at this point, and that has been a thing for PoE for I don't know how long at this point. Years. We have not even had classes in the game.
Some of them are certainly better, and some of them are certainly worse. The classes just have a very different thing about each one.
Yeah.
Even though there is kind of the subclass that you start the game off with, kind of branching out into three. Usually those three play very differently, except for a few examples, unless you really want to kind of push it out and do a very similar build. And while it has a lot of complexity on the top end, the classes, to really understand the best combinations that you should be using, actually you have to do a fair amount of research and looking into things, which is great for someone like me because I love figuring out and making my own builds in these type of games.
Same.
But the reason it's a game that is approachable, like Diablo 4, for example, is because the game doesn't really scale your character that crazy. So in Path of Exile, we have this thing where defenses are extremely tightly tuned. There's no item in the game that doubles your effective health in PoE.
Yeah.
There may be one or two in very specific builds that basically build into those items, and again, very, very few. In Diablo, there's items that quadruple the effective health of your character, and it's easy to get one. You just get...
Yeah, it's literally called just getting something with plus armor and HP.
a chest piece that has 4 defensive stats.
Yeah.
And then you get a shield that has 4 defensive stats for another quadruple. And then you get leggings with 4 defensive stats and another quadruple. And while they have tried to kind of tighten the knobs on damage in Diablo 4, they haven't really been very successful at doing that. And that's why Diablo 4 is pretty casual, because they make the game as a baseline pretty easy. And they do that because they haven't really finely tuned the balance on either offense or defense for a character. So
Now, I would say that this is kind of arguably not a description of what Diablo 4 actually is, but this is a romanticization of what Diablo 4 is in Crip's mind. Because I completely do not agree with this description. I think there is no attempt even made at these things, and the attempts that they did have completely failed and are useless. So there is no even balance between defense and damage to begin with. So yeah, I think this is kind of a slightly romanticization take on Diablo 4.
So that's why when you play Diablo 4, you can just play whatever junk build you want because the baseline difficulty of the game is low.
Yeah.
So that's why I consider Diablo 4 a pretty casual game. Path of Exile, the baseline difficulty of the game is quite high for someone that...
No. Path of Exile's baseline difficulty is a dumpster fire, okay? I have talked about this multiple times. But in Path of Exile, now they kinda are almost tuning it, but in Path of Exile, historically, the baseline for the game has been absolutely atrocious. Because there are skills that you can pick at random that are just gonna make your leveling a breeze, and there are some skills that you can pick and they're gonna make your leveling hell, because they're actually bad in most situations. For the longest time, people are saying, by the way, now that it's different and that it's fixed and it's, better now. But I'm going to tell you the most classic way, one of the most classic ways of playing Path of Exile. There are a lot of people who like playing necromancers, dark mages, and, things like that, right? If you're playing Path of Exile, what do you do in that case? Well, you pick the witch, obviously. And after that, if you're not the 60% who die against Hillock and delete their game afterwards, you get into the Strand. And then you have the ability to pick a reward, a skill gem in fact. And one of them is called Blight. So if you're gonna be some kind of necromancer, doodad, whatever dark mage, there's a big chance that instead of Fireball or Lightning Tendrils, well, you already have Fireball, but instead of Lightning Tendrils, Frost Orb, is it the other one? You're gonna pick a Blight. And Blight is an atrociously shit skill to level with. It is slow, it feels bad, the scaling for it is absolute dog shit, and no one should ever pick Blight, because it's just that bad. Okay? And this is like one of the most common pathways a new player would take in Path of Exile. And needless to say, after that experience, a lot of people just quit the game because, holy shit, my starter skill is literally barely playable, it deals barely any damage, it has barely any AoE, and I just want to end myself because I picked it. Now, people are telling me that no longer is the experience, because granted, I have not tried to level Blight or start with Blight forever at this point. For at least 2 years, I think. But 2 years ago, that was the experience. And PoE historically has had that kind of experience for a lot of skills. If you pick the right skill, you're gonna zoom past all of the content and tell maps. If you pick the wrong skill, well, congratulations. Here, struggle dealing with basic white mobs now. It's just, the difference in the quality of the skills at the start is just so unbelievably tremendous, it's not even, it's insane.
That hasn't played it before, it's extremely high for anyone that tries to play the game without looking up some information about the build they're...
Yeah, you don't even need to build, you just need to pick the right skill, and then leveling suddenly magically becomes better.
Willing to play. So where does Last Epoch fit into these things? Last Epoch, I say, has about as much control over defenses as PoE. I think if they fine-tune the ward mechanic, it would actually be even more finely tuned than PoE in terms of defenses. And in terms of damage, it's also...
Actually, I agree with this. The ward mechanic is the only thing that's kind of sus, I would say. Because either you completely ignore the ward mechanic because you have no scaling with it, Or the VOD mechanic is blatantly busted because you have scaling with it and it's just so easy and powerful.
Very finely tuned. I would say that last Epoch has finely tuned. There's no like super crazy damage scaler, again, except for very few instances, outliers that are probably going to be addressed. But for the most part, characters are not going to do million times more damage a few levels later. Okay, that's not how last Epoch works. And because you have a lot of complexity in the characters, the fact that the multipliers don't go too crazy for offense and they don't go too crazy for defense, it means that you can just play whatever trash build you want, and it's really not going to be that bad. Because even though you might be doing everything wrong, your character might be like half as tanky and do like a third of the damage, but not like a million times less damage like Diablo, and not 100 times less tanky or damage like PoE. So because of that, it's a game that satisfies people who love the complexity in ARPGs like myself, and it satisfies people who just kind of want to play the game at their own pace.
Yeah.
This is a game where you absolutely can do both, and they've been extremely careful to kind of craft the mechanics in the game for people to be able to do this. And honestly, it's really impressive. I think that's why the game has done so well at launch. They had over 200,000 players. I think that's why the game has done pretty well. Whenever I stream it, you guys seem to love me playing it, and I love playing it. I think it's an awesome game. And overall, it's just a blast. It delivers on everything an ARPG should for the most part. The class identity, the fun, and actually just playing, the flexibility to respec.
The class identity, I think, is the most important thing. And it's crazy good. Okay, again, I cannot just not stop jizzing about the class identity, okay? The fact that this game has such great class identity is crazy.
Back and try different abilities, the options to kind of tackle the content without feeling overwhelmed, even if you don't do a lot of the research. It's overall pretty good.
Yeah.
There are some outliers, and I don't really know how big or active their dev team is, and I feel like in cases like these, if outliers go unaddressed, it can kind of hurt the game over time. Like right now, they have a mechanic called Ward, which is pretty similar to barriers in Diablo 4. It's kind of like temporary HP. Now, it's kind of like barriers in Diablo 4 because they last like a certain amount of time, and you can scale something called ward retention to make it degrade less. It's not like barriers where you put it up and it lasts 5 seconds. No, ward naturally decays. The more you have, the faster it decays, but the more ward retention you have, the slower that decay rate is. And there's certain abilities that just grant you ward. So if you're taking advantage of those abilities, you can have like 10 times the amount of health that you should have. And for last Epoch, that is an extreme outlier. So right now, I think the mechanic...
Yeah, again, as I said at the start, if you have interactions with Ward, Ward's amazing and blatantly busted. If you don't have interactions with Ward, it's like, Ward's kind of weak, I guess.
Is actually pretty well designed, for the one exception that I think it should have a cap based on a percentage of your health. Like, I don't think Ward should exceed double your health, for example. In a rare case,
I'm not sure if that would actually solve the problem per se, but it's a suggestion. The only thing that I'm really worried about PoE technically is updates. And this is exactly what Krip mentioned here. Will they address smaller issues instantly? Because I honestly like and dislike when developers address smaller issues instantly. For example, a great example is how I do not like the developers fix things and address issues is in Diablo 4, where you can wake up one day, log in, and suddenly your character is 2 times weaker and you have no idea what the fuck is going on. Oh, that's because the developers nerfed some kind of build that was not even your build, but because you're using a part of that, now you're weaker? What the hell is this? Stuff like that. But I do like when when companies address really big issues fast. And I do not have an ARPG example of this, but I do have an example of this done very correctly. Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap will literally address singular card issues if they pop up in the meta for too long. Okay? If you have a situation where like some deck is super oppressive at the higher echelons of gaming for like a week or so, they're gonna single nerf a card to lower that deck. Okay? They're not gonna destroy the card, but they're gonna single nerf it so, you know, everyone doesn't have to play Thanos or whatever you want to call it. You know, Thanos has been typically an example of something that's played a lot. Thanos decks in Marvel Snap, or you know, some kind of destruction builds or whatever. But yeah, that's how it is.
Rare W for Diablo 4. I think Diablo 4 had barrier mechanics right. I think temporary barriers are pretty cool. Last Epoch's take on temporary is even cooler, I would say. It's just
Obviously.
the caps not existing in Last Epoch make it a pretty problematic mechanic overall. A lot of people have played Last Epoch like a ton this week, and some of them have said that they don't really kind of see the point in like going, you know, crazy endgame. Like there isn't that much endgame in Last Epoch, and that is the main concern that I've seen in the community. Overall, I think they are unfortunately correct. There isn't that much endgame in Last Epoch, but if someone really likes their character, really likes how it plays, or they really want to challenge themselves, Last Epoch has a system that appropriately rewards you for playing at a higher difficulty, which again is so rare in games these days. So they have kind of like the monolith system. It's kind of like maps. You kind of go node to node in a way, kind of like Delve and PoE. If you don't
Well, if you don't understand this point, how can it be Delve and how can it be well, you know, how can it be maps and Delve at the same time? It honestly does make sense when you are actually doing it, but it doesn't make sense if you haven't seen it. But yeah, a PoE system is just better in general. It kind of makes sense, and it doesn't actually give you any reasonable control, any reasonable anything, honestly. It just creates the illusion that you actually have some kind of magical control over things. And that's why Last Epoch's map system is the best, because it creates an illusion. And I needed to text two women right now, so that was that. Beautiful stuff.
know what that is, that's fine. It's basically you go like you hop like location to location. Each of these locations are varying difficulty, varying rewards, and you know what the big chest reward at the end will be. And when you do enough of these, you do the boss of that mod.
Yeah, and the best part about Last Epoch, by the way, the effect that it creates here, by the way, I think is really neat. Because it makes you look forward to like 3 mobs down the road. Okay? For example, in Path of Exile or Diablo 4. In Diablo 4, you don't even know what's the reward. You're just like, oh, I gotta go into a dungeon again, and then you're sad, right? Because the reward is probably shit. But in Path of Exile, you choose a mob that you want to make, and then you make it how it's gonna be. And there is a lot of good there because you're crafting how it's gonna be, you pick what you want, and so on and so on and so on. It does give you a lot of freedom with what you want to do with the map, but I think Last Epoch's system is better because it kind of works like Delve when you're looking 3 maps down the line and you're thinking like, man, I do these 3 maps where I kind of don't even care about what's happening, but then I do this and there's a good chance, there's a shot at something good there. I want to do that. And that's a great feeling. I think Last Epoch completely wins in the map system because of it.
Monolith, and there's like, I don't know, 10 monoliths or something like that. So, bosses, they're actually pretty cool, but usually the bosses are a little bit easier than the mobs in the nodes, and I would
It's It's snowing! No, it's supposed to be spring!
Say that the bosses aren't quite as cool as they are in Path of Exile. They
Curse you, climate change that we cannot prove with science that is caused by humans. Curse you!
are pretty much on the level of Diablo 4 in terms of coolness and mechanics and all that kind of stuff. So, pretty good, but not really mind-blowing. They have said that their next big update will include like pinnacle bosses, and that is pretty exciting on one hand, but on the other, having challenged a lot of the monolith bosses that currently exist in the game, I would say that the timing for a lot of their abilities is a little bit off. And just to be clear, I play in offline mode, so
yeah, I mean, that's kind of slightly true, I guess.
it's not like the game is, their servers are lagging and then the boss didn't properly telegraph. No, it's like the boss is going to drop the meteor and I get hit by the meteor before the animation of him actually dropping it happens. You know, there's a few instances like that, and when we're talking about killing characters in one hit or almost in one hit, it's a little bit problematic if we scale that up to like a pinnacle level for bosses. So that might be a challenge, and I do hope they take that on well. Overall, the game is very cool. They also launched with kind of like the trade, and that has also been really well received. If you want the online experience and trade items and all that, you can have it. Their servers haven't really held up very well. That's where most of the complaints happen.
Yeah, I mean, valid complaints. I'm actually so pissed that the servers didn't hold up that, you know, there was no way for them to do it. By the way, it wasn't the servers holding up poorly. It was some kind of issue that they didn't even know existed, only showed itself to be an issue when all the people went in. It wasn't actually like, oh, the servers can't handle it to a degree. But it was actually some other bug that they didn't even know existed until the point that all of the people tried to get in on it. It is insane. It is insane. Last Epoch, great stuff. Great stuff. I hope other games can learn from it. It's going to be successful. It's going to be great. It's going to be receiving a lot of updates in the future. And, I mean, I'm excited. Anyway, that was our boy Crep right there. Creparian, full name. Okay? This was Quizzer Said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.